Bates ready. A tsunami hits a city full of people and only a few people remain from the area surrounded by sharks from all directions. The film starts in Australia on a beach. From the beach and we see Rory going to get Josh from the car and we understand from their words that Josh will marry Tina, Rory's sister, soon. So Josh goes to the beach to sit with Tina for a while. After a while, Josh and Tina meet and they know that after they finish the trip, they will travel to Singapore at that time. We see Rory who took a piece of ice and entered the seawater and he doesn't care about the shadow of an animal that has passed under him. We see one of the swimmers who suddenly slips into the water and he doesn't get hurt by this man except a tear on the divers in the water who is being pulled out of the water and he doesn't get hurt by this man except a tear on the divers in the water who is being pulled out of the water and he on the divers in the water who is being pulled out of the water and he doesn't get hurt by this man except a tear on the divers in the water who is being pulled out of the water and he doesn't get hurt by this man except a tear on the divers in the water who is being pulled out of the water and he doesn't get hurt by this man except a tear on the divers in the water who is being pulled out of the water and he doesn't get hurt by this man except a tear on the divers in the water who is being pulled out of the water and he doesn't get hurt by this man except a tear on the divers in the water who is being pulled out of the water and he is not being pulled out of the water except for a tear on the face of the water. The shore guard notices what happened to the diver from afar so he turns on the guard's warning device and tells him that there is no crunch in the water and Josh notices that his friend is still in the water so Josh took the sea motorcycle and entered the water quickly to catch up with his friend. Tina kept warning him not to go into the water and at the same time she was terrified of her brother who was in the sea. Josh tried to warn his friend from afar that there was a fish in the water but Rory could not hear a word from him and suddenly the fish jumped under the ice and broke it and threw Rory into the water. Josh immediately grabbed his friend's hand and tried to pull him out of the motorcycle but unfortunately the fish dragged Rory under the water and finished him. And he was not saved except for a blood clot. After a year of what happened, we see Josh in his house. Josh separated himself and Tina from each other, and this is because Josh felt guilty that he could not save his friend, and Josh was open on television while he was having breakfast. Josh hears the news of the sea and knows that there are attacks from sharks on the beaches, and this is what made him sad because he was a homeless man. We go back to the army that arrived at his workplace and was working in a hypermarket. We see a customer named Jimmy. She was stealing things from the shelves but the security guard was very careful but Jimmy took care of the guard and ran away. She entered the surveillance room and hid by chance. She found Ryan working in the place. She ran to him quickly and locked him up but suddenly the manager of the place and the security came in on them. The manager asked for Jimmy's investigation. Ryan asked the manager to steal everything from his client but Ulyss was shocked and they found out that he was a thief and that they were the two who would stay here until the police arrived. Josh was working normally. And he was talking to his friend Naomi but suddenly he hears a strange voice and he looks next to him and hears the voice of Tina who he hadn't seen for a year and it turns out that she was driving with her new lover Steven, and he talked to Tina for a while. But Ulyss came and told Josh to clean the bathrooms. Josh got upset and left. We saw the two who were in the car and wanted to steal a place. They arrived at the hypermarket where Josh worked, and there was one guy who was in the car. One of them named Doy and the other one Dean. He gets a police officer and he is Jimmy's father. He takes his daughter to go to the car park. He gives her a lesson to improve her manners and not steal but Jimmy wasn't interested in the car but before he got in the car, he noticed a criminal inside the hypermarket. He was armed, so he took a weapon from his car and went after the man. We see the armed man who entered the hypermarket and was Din went to the manager's office and entered without anyone noticing him and raised his weapon to the manager and ordered him to bring all the money in the treasury but Ulyss shows him the treasury and that it does not have money so he takes Din and leaves with him and he threatens him with weapons to make him bring the money to the cashier but Todd saw him and did it to him. And Todd can put Din with his weapon but Doy also appeared and was holding a knife but Todd saw him and did the same to him and Todd can use his weapon to kill the demon but he appeared too. And he was holding a. We see Josh in the bathroom. And he found water and he heard a loud sound and he quickly went out of the bathroom. Josh found that he was alone and Tina was under his weapon threat. Suddenly the place started to shake and there was an earthquake at the beach. We see the water of the sea and it goes back far from the beach and suddenly the water made a huge tsunami entering the city. Literally this tsunami flooded everything in the city and the water entered the hypermarket. And we see Ryan who was in his car, and suddenly the water of the tsunami hit the city and the water entered the hypermarket, and we see Ryan in his car and suddenly the tsunami hit him and there were two people in the car and the water hit them too. After the tsunami calms down we find the hypermarket destroyed and Josh leaves the water. And we find few people alive. Josh helps Todd and Steven to get out of the water and he tries to get out of the iron that entered Todd's legs, so Josh asks Josh to look for any help to stop Todd's wound, and at that time she saw Jimmy, her father, and she quickly got out of the water, and she also thought that her lover Ryan was in the car crash and she would go to follow him. All the people in the car died from the water. Jimmy was sad about Ryan. Josh found Tina in the water and was shocked by what happened. He went down to follow her. He took her to go up the stairs with the rest of the people. Tina, before she went out, saw a body being pulled under the water. She didn't understand what pulled her. Steven was looking for the tools. He found a person who was still alive. We go back to the car that was destroyed in all water. We see that the couple's car did not enter it, but they were afraid because they felt the water moving next to them. They look at the two of them behind them and they are shocked when they find a body. We see that Ryan is still alive and that his car did not enter water, but Ryan decided to leave to save himself, and he turns to the refugees and he breaks the window glass of Ryan and he lets the water enter the car, and then he leaves Rayon and could actually get out of the car and call the survivors, but no one answered him. Suddenly something passed under Ryan's leg and he was stuck in the water. Ryan was scared and he was scared and he didn't know what happened to him. A man was getting hurt. And he tells Elise that the water is gradually increasing and if he stays here he will die and he must find a solution. Josh tells them that he can't go to the exit and leave Todd in this situation, and that's why Josh told them that someone is volunteering to go to the exit. Tina and Steven went down and searched. Dean suggested to Josh to go and make sure of the exit if there is a door there to get them out. But Todd entered and told them that he will not go anywhere and told Todd Bob the security him to go and check the car. The car was still in the car and the police officer was still in the car. The police officer told him to go and check the car. The police officer told him to get out of the water. Steven and Tina quickly got out of the water, but Bob was not able to get out and suddenly something pulled him under the water and everyone was terrified when they heard Bob scream, but suddenly Bob came out of the water and he asked Jimmy to help him. Jimmy tried as much as she could to catch him, but there was something under the water that swallowed his whole body. Jimmy's body was in his hand and they were scared of the scene, but the problem was that they found the body 7 meters long and Josh confirmed that it was a shark fish and he warned them all. We go back to Ryan who was looking for any way out, and with the two couples who were still in their car they were fighting, and he asked Soil to take his wife's coach to break the glass. But Hazard opened the roof and Soil got out of the roof and Ryan found him. He asked him to follow them and Ryan sat down to talk to them to make a plan to reach them. Suddenly, the fish warned that there was a fish in the corner, so he immediately went down the roof and sat next to his wife. The fish hit the glass and broke a part of it. The group in the upper floor thought about solving the situation, but there was another problem. The power cable fell and the water was still flowing. If the wire touched the water, they would all die. Josh told them that the electric wire was locked in the warehouse in front of them. Josh would go down into the water. But Tina stopped him and told him not to go. Steven decided to go and he had a plan. Steven, before he goes into the water, put his whole body on the iron so that the shark can't get close to him, and put Steven a carton in his mouth to breathe in and go into the water and hold the carton of Steven. And meet Steven the shark. On his way the shark stays with him for a while and finally leaves him. After Steven moves and reaches the site, the electric knife will is in front of him, but the problem is that the rod that he breathes from is too short and Steven has to remove the rod to move and close the knife. Steven decides to remove the rod. And he goes to remove the electric knife and he actually managed to remove the electric knife from the place and tried to go up to the water to breath, but when he tried to go up to the roof and breath, the iron that he wears didn't let him get on the roof. So Steven decided to surrender and died. Tina knows that Steven died and she's sad. She tries to comfort Jimmy, but Tina was very sad for Steven. Naomi and Dean made a plan to kill Steven. He was trying to get out of the car, but he was not able to, and he was forced to leave the car. He was trying to get out of the car, but he was forced to leave the car. He was trying to get out of the car, but he was forced to leave the car. He was trying to get out of the car, but the dog saw them in the water. He turned them again, and at the last moment before the dog ate them, he was able to get Hazer out of the car in the water, and before he got out the dog was getting very close to him, so he quickly threw Hazer's dog out. And quickly went next to Hazer in the car, and in the second round they brought his rope and threw it at the open, and Ollie's insisted that he was the one who came out of the open. And raised his face with the rope, and Ollie's reached the open and was able to find a large number of scorpions inside, and he was scared that he would fall into the water. But his balance returned and Fidel held on to the rope, and suddenly the fish of the crunch of the water jumped on his body and split it in half, and he fell into the water. His name is Ulyss. In the water Tina fell down too, and before the whole crew got out and all of them were terrified after what happened, we go back to Ryan and his wife in the garage, and Hazer was very upset that Soil threw his dog and got rid of him and tried to make Soil justify his position. But his wife was still upset, and Ryan was trying to find a way out in any place he couldn't find, and he decided to move to the rails on the roof, and before he goes to the rails the explorer with him falls into the water, so Ryan goes down to get on the rails on the roof, and before he got on the rails the detective with him falls into the water, so he quickly gets down and gets Ryan out. Ryan is making his plan and gets on the rails on the roof. And the cat was right under him, and he was waiting for him to fall or make any wrong move, and suddenly Ryan's leg was broken and he was about to fall, and unfortunately Ryan falls into the water. The cat didn't catch up with him because Soil and Hazer followed him before he ate and got out of the car. The whale was taking Ryan with his wife. He got into a mistake and fell into the water. His wife didn't catch up with Ryan, and the shark cut the whale in front of him. The group upstairs were very desperate and waiting for death, but the only religion that still encouraged them and gave them hope. They decided to get rid of the shark, and a hunter was needed in the water towards the place of the hunter, so they volunteered to go and get him, but Jimmy couldn't let her father go down and immediately jumped into the water, and the shark was behind Jimmy. But Jimmy was faster than him. Jimmy managed to enter the area where the hunter was sitting, and when the shark tried to attack her, she hit him on the head and made him move away. Jimmy gets the hunter and ties him to the rope. And ties him to a big piece of meat to use it to make the knife, and then he pulls it out of the water. After a while he starts to work on the knife, and he notices Tina in his sister's series, and he knows that he has never been a friend since the day he died, and that all this time he felt guilty, and he apologizes to her because he left her and she has nothing to do with it. And then he throws the meat in the water, and the lamb passed by the meat and did not give it any attention. One of the group called Kirby said that the lamb certainly wanted human meat. Suddenly Kirby took out a gun from his pocket and grabbed Naomi and threatened that he would get close to him and kill him. Kirby appears with a knife in his hand. Kirby is the criminal Duty who is supposed to be dead in the water. Kirby changes his clothes with a body so that no one can find him. Duty throws a soft water in the water to the shark. Duty raises his weapon to the shark so that he does not get close to him. Suddenly Duty is hurt from behind with a spear. Duty comes out of the water and quickly takes out a soft water. Duty puts the knife in Duty's body. Duty throws it in a soft place and the shark comes and eats Duty. The plan succeeds and the knife enters her in a dead body, and they throw him a place to sleep, and we see the dog eating the dog, and the plan succeeds and the hunter enters the dog's den, and this will keep him in his place and he will not be able to live behind them. Ryan and Hazer were still in the car. And suddenly the dog of Hazer comes from behind them, and he comes out that he is still alive, and the dog sleeps until Hazer, and Hazer is very happy that he is still alive, and Ryan comes up with an idea and he grabs a piece of iron and starts to hit the rails, and the sound reaches the group in the room above them, and Jimmy confirms that Ryan is alive. Jimmy jumps in the water to save Ryan. And Josh jumps behind her to catch her. He asks her to take care of his daughter and he gives her a series of Josh, and he says goodbye to Tina. Jimmy's brother asked him to go after Jimmy and close the door at the group so that the water level does not rise more on them, and they open the door at the garage and the water that was at the sink enters the garage, and you find Jimmy. Ryan warns her and he runs after the fish of the perch, so immediately Jimmy takes Jimmy and goes up a car from the cars at the last moment. And it turns out that this is Jimmy's father's car, and Jimmy knows that there is a gun in the car and he had to get it and get rid of it on the boat. He gets down to the car and gets the gun from it and goes out to put a gun in it and goes down to the water to get rid of the boat and brings the boat closer to him and opens his mouth, and before the boat gets caught, he was a man who got rid of it. We see the other group that arrived at the exit and found it blocked by a car, and he brought the cars to the electric car to start blowing them up, but an earthquake happens in the place, and the cause of the boat is the one of its mouth, and he noticed Josh, and decided to kill himself, and warned everyone to get out of the water. The water that entered the city was not hit by the water that entered it. So before the archer comes to him, he jumps on the rails on the roof and hangs his body in them. He takes out his electric gun and hits the archer, and we see the archer, he is electrified in the water and dies, and turns on the electric current in the end. He explodes the cars that block the exit, and all the cars explode, and the exit, it opens for them, and the group leaves and sees the destruction that happened in the city. And the tsunami destroyed everything literally, and suddenly they find helicopter planes above them to rescue the survivors, and thus the group will be able to rescue themselves and get out of the middle of the